Immortals Fenyx Rising may have one of the worst names for a game this year, but it's also one of the year's best games. Immortals takes the format of Breath of the Wild for its base, and throws in a solid combat system, a good story, and a lot of charm and humor. Do not assume that it's just another Ubisoft open world game. This is far from it. I really enjoyed how the exploration is all player initiated. You can survey the area and find many points of interest to check out. The map is not pre-populated with checkbox type stuff, so you need to actively seek it out, which also makes it feel like you are actually exploring rather than just checking stuff off. Each of these different locations will provide you with upgrades for your character, either through completing different dungeons or puzzles to open new chests. The dungeons are a highlight as they feature a set of different puzzles with a nice reward at the end. The combat is solid as well. You have access to a light and heavy attack along with a few moves for avoiding damage. If you can dodge at the right time, the game will go into slow-mo, and this gives you an opportunity to get a leg up on all of the enemies. There is also a stun system at play as well. Your heavy attacks and god powers will build up a stun meter, and once an enemy is stunned, then you will be able to do extra damage. Immortals is familiar in its approach, but it still feels really refreshing from its gameplay and how well done everything is. The story also enhances the experience. The story is narrated by Zeus and Prometheus, and they have a lot of good back and forth together, and the game is pretty funny as well. If you are looking for a dense but not bloated open world with solid gameplay and a charming tone, then this is for you. Zombie Army 4 is easily one of my favorite games from 2020. Rebellion is a studio that consistently makes quality games. I absolutely love their Sniper Elite series, and they keep getting better with each new entry. Zombie Army 4 comes packed with content to enjoy. You have a sizable campaign that is enjoyable in single player and in online co-op. The campaign features a variety of different locations, and while you will always be fighting the undead, the game comes packed with good enemy variety to keep the action engaging. You will have the standard zombies, sniper zombies that jump from rooftop to rooftop, heavy zombies, and much more. The action itself is really satisfying. You will blow off heads and limbs during combat. The slow-mo camera from the Sniper Elite series makes a return, and I would argue that it's at its best here since heads actually blow up. After you have completed the campaign, the game has several horde maps to enjoy, and more are continually added for free. One thing that I really liked about the horde mode is how you can opt to stay and keep fighting or evacuate from the area after a certain amount of stages. As you play, you will level up and gain new skills and improve your weapons. Zombie Army 4 is awesome, mindless fun. Sackboy is the PS5's first underrated exclusive. I feel like this game got lost under all the other big exclusives that dropped around the same time. With Demon's Souls and Spider-Man releasing at the same time, this delightful platformer was not getting the attention it deserved. Sackboy has great gameplay along with charm and humor that you would expect from a Nintendo title. If this had the Mario name attached to it, this game would not have been ignored. Sackboy provides quality variety in its levels, and my favorite of these are the music-themed stages that have the entire stage moving to the beat of the music. The game can be played in single player and in co-op. There's even co-op specific levels that are great as you try to solve the different puzzles with a friend. From the enjoyable story to the charm and humor, this game is simply a great experience. Darksiders is a series that I love, and they are underdogs within the industry. While Darksiders Genesis technically came out in 2019 for Stadia and PC, it came to consoles earlier this year, and I absolutely loved it. Genesis acts as a top-down prequel where you play as either War or Strife. While at first glance this may look like a Diablo clone, but this is a complete Darksiders experience from a top-down perspective. War and Strife play very differently from each other. War is slower and more melee-based, where Strife is faster and fights mainly with guns. The combat generally feels pretty great, with you either slashing or shooting at enemies. The gameplay is split between enjoyable combat along with exploration. This will involve a bunch of environmental puzzles, as each of the different levels will have plenty for you to collect to enhance your horsemen. The two different horsemen will help you interact with the environments in different ways, so when you're playing by yourself, you're going to be switching between the two of them, and while in co-op, you're going to be communicating with your partner. The levels offer a lot of replay value with all the weapons you find, along with the progression. This is a welcome addition to the Darksiders series. While Mafia Remake received some good attention when it was first released, it quickly got forgotten with all the other big titles that came out this fall. This entire series is very underrated. The main selling point to the games are the stories. Mafia 2 was my introduction into the franchise. I went back and played the original Mafia, and while the story itself is timeless, the gameplay sections were very dated. Both the melee combat and shooting mechanics were very clunky. So as long as a remake would not change much about the story and improve the gameplay, then this was going to be a great game to dive back into. I was really impressed with the level of care that the developers did with this remake. They stayed true to the characterizations of the original, and in some areas they improved the relationships between the characters. In the original, Tommy's wife was used more as a plot point than actually being a character. In the remake, Sarah has much more screen time and it is most appreciated. The melee is vastly better than the original, but it's probably still the weakest area of the game. The shooting received a nice upgrade as these mechanics are pretty much lifted from Mafia 3. The cover shooting works how you would expect it to, and the brutal violence makes these situations satisfying. The driving is great as well and provides you with some nice options to make it more realistic. If you are a longtime fan or new to the series, this is a great game to check out if you're looking for a great story. Resident Evil 3 Remake may be a very short game, but it's also one of the most highly replayable games that I played this year. I understand that fans were disappointed in some areas related to levels being cut from the original or similar mechanics not being found in this remake. But just like with Resident Evil 2, 3 is a quality game that does not replace the original, but rather proudly stands next to it. I see these remakes as a way for Capcom to present these traditional Resident Evil adventures through a modern game. Resident Evil 3 is more action-focused, and I really love the fast pacing. The endgame shop provides you with plenty of replay value along with different difficulty modes to enjoy as well. Depending on the difficulty, the enemy placements will be different. While the new multiplayer portion of the game does have its issues, I got more fun out of it than I initially thought I would. Playing as the mastermind was really enjoyable, and I like how you could play mind games and toy with other people in the match. The game isn't without its flaws, but it also got a lot right. For a direct single-player experience, it exceeds at providing us with a classic Resident Evil campaign with a hero to root for and some great action. While Kingdoms of Amalur did not release this year, a remaster came out for it, along with the announcement that new expansions are on the way. Amalur was underrated when it initially released, and it still remains an underrated RPG. Amalur has a similar setup to other Western open-world RPGs, and it gets so much stuff right. I love the combat system within this game. You can equip 2 weapons at once. This allows you to change what weapon you are using mid-combo. This can allow you to use a sword and a bow to allow for easy juggling, or you can focus on staves or heavy weapons. Each of the different weapons have their advantages, and it more comes down to what you want to choose to use. Along with this, the game provides a wealth of variety in how you tackle the game. You can focus on building better armor, bettering your bartering skills, focusing on persuading people during conversations, along with a lot more. Amalur has a destiny card system where, depending on where you put your points when you level up, you will unlock new character classes that provide you with different buffs. What I appreciated about the quest was how each person you talked to had a lot to tell you, whether about their quests themselves or just background information that helps to flesh out the world. The game's art style makes this one of the most beautiful RPGs I have ever played. If you are a fan of RPGs and are looking for a game to provide you with a substantial amount of content, I would highly recommend you play this one. While Vanquish is another game that was not released this year, it was remastered and put on the Xbox and PS4. This is easily one of the best third-person shooters I have ever played. I loved it when it came out, and it still feels fresh to this day. From a gameplay perspective, Vanquish is a masterclass. What makes the third-person shooting so unique is how you have thrusters attached to your back. This allows you to zip and move to different points around the battlefield. If you fire while in a burst, then the game will go into slow-mo. There's a good amount of mobility options as well here. This is another great example of a short and sweet experience. The story is over the top and very cheesy. This is something that you would expect out of an 80s action movie with the style and awesome action that you would expect to see out of Japan. Sam is a likable enough main character, but the true star of the story are the funny lines along with the awesome action sequences. Vanquish still remains so unique to this day because there hasn't been anything else like it. I love this game. When it comes to movie-based games, it can be a real toss-up if they are going to be handled with care, or if the developer is trying to make a cheap game that cashes in on the love for the franchise. And then you have movie-based games that seem to be created with the fans in mind. While Terminator Resistance technically came out last year, it was not released in America until January of 2020. I included it in my underrated games list of last year, and this gives me a great excuse to present this once again. Terminator Resistance impressed me with its care to create a solid game, and that it respected the first two films even more so than the recent movie efforts. The game may have a dated look to it, but the Terminators look great and the atmosphere from the films is fully realized. And the developers nailed the two most important aspects of the game, the story and the gameplay. The game is set during the war between the humans and the machines. I really enjoyed how many of the levels featured large areas where you are free to explore, fight Terminators, and find useful materials. These mini explorable levels made me want to see a game that was on the scale of Fallout but within the Terminator franchise. The exploration is mostly there if you want to take your time and search the different buildings and complete side missions. This stuff is worth doing. You will find a good variety of items and weapons to use. The sound effects for the laser weapons brings me right into the movies. This is a short and sweet game that I would recommend for any Terminator fan and anyone looking for a fun first-person shooter. Before we end the video, I do want to briefly mention Fairy Tail. This is a fun turn-based RPG based on the anime of the same name. I had no prior experience with the anime, but the game is full of charming characters, humor, and a solid combat system. I had a great time with this game. So that is my list for underrated games of 2020. What were some of your games that you found to be underrated? And thank you very much for watching.